The punishing terrains of a motocross track demand precision technique and peak physical conditioning. South African Anthony Raynard takes us round his home track.
I love speed. Going around a track, hitting a jump at 80, 100 kilometers an hour, I think I get the thrill out of that. Motocross is an action-packed, adrenaline junkie sport. It's filled with big jumps, high-speed turns, and various terrains. You race from start to finish, so 100% from the start to finish. Whether you crash and drop the bike, you get back up and you go again. Winning a motocross race usually comes down to a few seconds, but when you're racing at the top level in motocross, you really need to cut it so fine and try every lap, hit the perfect lines. It's extremely difficult because there's 40 guys going around a track and the lines are constantly changing. You need to be precise as to what line you're taking, lap after lap. This is Zone 7 in Cape Town and this is my home track. It's really an incredible facility. It has a few different elements. It's got the sand, it's got the hard pack, and really high speed and nice long jumps. Down the back straight, you're hitting close to 90, 100 kilometers an hour, and that's over 2 tabletops. Going into jumps, generally you want to keep a neutral position on the bike, so be centered in the bike, your head kind of in line with the handlebar, and most of the jumps are 3rd, 4th gear, possibly a 5th gear jump. It really depends where the jump is as to what speed you're going to hit it. Some of the jumps are rather small, but they're extremely technical because they've got steep faces. So they pop you over quite high, but you want to stay as low as possible jumping over the jump. So try what we call now scrubbing or whipping. You turn the bike on the face to stay as low as possible as you go through the air. A lot of the other jumps, we've got I think 4 or 5 big jumps on this track that are between 25 and 40 meters long. So they're extremely long jumps, which you need to hit at a high speed to clear, and obviously once again stay as low as possible. You generally want to land on your back wheel first. It's a lot safer to land back wheel and you're getting your traction down, so you're on the gas and you can race away from a jump. There's 3 different surfaces and terrains on this Zone 7 track, so it changes your body position for each rider in a big way. My personal preference, sandy conditions, you need to be a lot more at the back of the bike, so you're leaning more to the back and you're really railing and keeping your speed up through turns, braking as late as possible, also not hard on the brakes. Where on the hard pack conditions, so the harder surfaces, you need to brake a little bit harder, but also be smooth and not lock up your wheels and slide into turns, and definitely sit as far forward on the bike so you get pressure onto the front wheel and cut your line through a turn. I raced a 250 4-stroke and a 450 4-stroke, so it's 2 separate classes, the 450 being a bigger bike. The main focus is the suspension. Obviously the weight of a rider changes the suspension. Each rider likes a different feel, whether they want a soft ride or a hard ride. Usually the faster the rider, the harder the suspension, because you don't want the suspension to compress too much. So over the bumps, you just want to stay on the top of the bumps and keep your speed up. Tire choice is extremely crucial. Like I said, there's different terrains. So when you go to a hard pack track, you need a really hard compound tire, which obviously it won't break up as easy. But when you go to a sand track, I absolutely love sand. So you need a scooped out tire. The spaces in between the knobs on the tires are slightly wider, so there's more of a scoop, which picks up the sand and chunks it out. So you stay on top of the sand and get through. My weekly training regime is quite heavy. Coming down to the track is 3 to 4 times during the week. And then the other days, and usually the days that I'm riding, you have a cardio session or a gym session. Handling a 100-kilogram bike around the track for 30 minutes, you can think for yourself, is fairly hectic. So your cardio needs to be extremely high. Also, when we're racing, from start to finish for 30 minutes, your heart rate is absolutely maxing. So if you can push your heart rate to 200 beats per minute, that's where you're at for 30 minutes of racing. It's really physically demanding on the body. Winning a race, you can't beat that. You have that feeling of pure accomplishments and knowing that you sacrificed, you put in the hard work, and you walk away on the top step of the podium.